You're watching a special edition of STR. We're here at Cosmic Monkey in North Portland with Jon Ascher, the creator of Neil, and this is the release party. How you doing, Neil? Or John?
I'm doing well, thank you. This is my first graphic novel or comic book release of anything.
And so, tell us a little bit about the actual logo that creates the title, because it has a little bit of meaning behind the theme of the story.
Oh, you mean the title, like on
Yeah.
the cover?
Yeah.
Well, I kind of just a little bit of a double entendre between the name Neil and the word Neil or nil or Neil. That means nothing in like German existential philosophy and what
Sure.
what have you. So the book kind of gets into some dark places, and the main character Neil kind of goes through some angsty situations, and
So why don't you give us a little bit of a background on what the character goes through and what this book is really about?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to sum up, so to speak, but I guess it's a fable, but it's a fable that's not rooted in anything supernatural or any kind of fairies or fantasy. I wanted to do a fable for people that doesn't necessarily have to do with God or anything magical. So I have this very urban, very modern, kind of realistic sort of story, and it kind of takes a character who hits a really low point in his life after some crazy hijinks and some drugs and some partying and some good stuff and bad stuff, and kind of spirals into a deep depression as he's trying to quit using heroin.
And one of his friends dies as well.
One of his friends dies, and there's a few factors of how his life seems to be kind of coming apart, or why he's so down. And the moral of the story kind of plays out in the second half of the book, which where the character sort of goes through a lot of paranoid, surreal sort of twists, and it kind of builds to a head.
And so now this part of the book, you actually played around a lot with usual comic tropes, like how you set up the panels and things like that. Could you talk about that a little bit?
These 2 pages I have set up so that the straight line goes vertically down the middle of the pages, so that intuitively, hopefully, the reader reads the pages instead of left to right, left to right, left to right across rows.
Uh-huh.
The reader actually reads top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom through columns, and these that scene is sort of supposed to be a real surreal, very dreamy like scene where some really weird stuff starts going on, and reality starts to spiral out of control for this character, for Neil. That was just one more aspect of the book that sort of spins it on its edge. So maybe that adds to the feel I'm hoping for the reader.
Sure. I mean, it plays with some of the typical comic book tropes where, like you said, your eye goes left to right and down the page. And so I found that interesting. And then you have some other parts where it kind of spirals, and you kind of play with the paneling on the pages.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just sort of wanted this to be a unique comic book experience for the reader. I didn't want it to follow a template of any kind of typical thing that's on the shelves. I didn't really reference too much of other comics that are out there.
Sure.
Just to for better for worse. But I'm hoping I'm successful in a lot of the ways that to try and convey either the sense of what's going on or make it clear exactly what's going on.
I think that you did a really good job of playing outside of the box and, like you said, conveying those feelings and kind of what's going on in the story with some of the art and the changes in the art. Could you speak to some of that? Because the art style changes subtly in different parts of the books.
Yeah, I definitely changed the art style in a few different directions throughout the story, and part of it is very intentional. A very rough and raw and simplified when something is emotionally heightened, and some of it is very realistic, almost photorealistic during scenes that take place maybe in the past or that are I guess in the past it's similar to photograph, because it's that kind of evokes looking at something that's happened in the past. So I did use a lot of photo reference for my characters and scenes, just because I wanted to keep my characters looking consistent. I had different actors and actresses playing different parts, and that's not to say the whole book was completed as photographs and that I painted those over, because maybe about half the book it references photos and half of it does not. So that probably, but just by itself, leaves for some divergence in style.
Sure.
And lastly, one more thing I have to say is that I kind of completed this book several times over the course of a decade, a little more than a decade. The project just kept expanding in scope. I started it as a degree project in college with a professor of mine, it started off as more of a comedy and became more of a serious drama at one point, and became more of a black comedy, and kind of ended up with this kind of Twilight Zone-y. Am I allowed to say Twilight Zone? Is that?
Yeah, you're fine.
Right, I don't want to infringe on anybody's...
I think we're off their radar.
Okay. All right. So I'm basically ripping off Twilight Zone.
So now that's something that's interesting to mention, is that there's a lot of black humor in here, and there's a couple of points that I laughed out loud. How did you go about writing that? Because it's a very dark and twisted kind of story, and it's surprising when there's these flashes of humor in there.
Well, it's I wanted the dark areas of the story, the dismal kind of doldrums, to be realistic or evocative of something somebody could relate to. And I guess to get to that, I also had to make the comedy. I had to make the characters three-dimensional, and I had to, because I don't want the whole book to be depressing.
Sure.
And in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, which is, we see it every Christmas, but it's really a good movie. Frank Capra, does a great job of taking us through this story of what's his name's life? George Bailey. Thank you. I remember Clarence's name. I just don't remember. And Mary.
It adds some contrast to the starkness and the bleakness that is kind of peppered in throughout the story.
But yeah, I mean, like It's a Wonderful Life. What I was gonna say is, it's not a movie about this guy who wants to jump off a bridge, which is, kind of the big peak of the movie, where things start to happen and things start to turn weird and supernatural, and it was I can't say that wasn't an influence on me also, but that the movie's not remembered for being this depressing, suicidal movie. That's a factor, and that's
it's an uplifting movie.
But yeah, exactly. It's and just like in this story is supposed to be life affirming and uplifting, and like a fable. That's why I call it a fable. It sort of comes full circle to a conclusion that it's something that we can take away with us, that is hopeful and is worthwhile in life.
So now 50% of the proceeds are going to a charity. You want to speak about that?
Sure. The charity is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, or AFFP. AFFSP. And their website is outofthedarkness.org. They do walks in different communities to raise money and stuff like that. But I had a friend in high school who killed himself shortly after we were out of high school, and he was a brilliant guy, and I loved him dearly, and it's just incredibly sad situation. And so I took my original story, which is just a silly kind of comedy, and I, at the advice of my professor, who I was working with at the time, I personalized it and kind of based the main character somewhat on my friend who's not around anymore, and so the idea of suicide and that kind of existential crisis that someone can go through is something I'm pretty passionate about, and it's, I it still affects me.
Sure, yeah.
And I know a lot of other people who it still affects. From my situation that I had in my life with him, and also just other people who've known other people. It's just it's a sad thing. I don't see it getting a lot of attention because it is a really dark and scary subject matter. So I thought this charity was worthwhile, and I wanted to do this, for.
Great. So how much is it, and where can you get it at?
Oh, how much is the book?
Yes.
Cover price is $15. You can get it at cacklingimpress.com. That's cackling, like CACKLING, imp, IMP, press. My father originally heard me say it, and he said, cackling impress. And so it's not impress, it's imp press. So
Got
it's 2 words. .com, that's my publisher, Cackling Imp, lovely publisher out of Portland, Oregon. And it's available also at barnesandnoble.com and borders.com, I believe. It's going to be available in a digital version for iPads and iPods and
Nice.
iPhones, and distributors graphically for that version. I think I might make an even happier ending for that version. No. All right. Well, thanks for sitting down with us, Jon.